Hey everybody, welcome to the Lionheart Institute podcast. I'm Richard Thomas.
And I'm Tiffany Thomas.
And we want to welcome you to what's going to be an amazing event tonight. This event tonight is going to change their lives. You want to know why? Because it's Brian Lovelace that we've got on the line tonight. I want to encourage you and thank you for being involved in the podcast that we've been doing. Our series on interviews has been absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Some of the best interviews that I've seen in the world in the sense of motivation, inspiration, and just some practical wisdom on how to live our lives at the highest level possible, overcome the obstacles that are in front of us, and really reach our full potential. Now, in the world that we live in today, COVID is crazy.
Right.
Politics are crazy.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
The world that we live in, people are divided for no real good reason. But the gentleman that we're bringing on tonight, he's a uniter.
Yeah, for sure.
I've known him probably 15 to 20 years. And the whole time I've known him, it's been transformational. Not only transformation in my life in the sense of his relationship with me, but I've seen transformation happen in his life. Yeah. I hope you'll get into it, but he has one of the most remarkable stories from childhood up. Mm-hmm. When he first ran into my life, he was still kind of emerging out of a bubble. And if you've ever seen somebody emerge out of a bubble, it's a beautiful thing. It's a miraculous thing, really.
Yeah.
Because their life begins to transform in such a way that they gain confidence, mm-hmm. and they, in his case, gain tremendous strategies that position them to not only change their own life, but mm-hmm. as he's doing right now, change other people's lives.
Yeah.
Brian, I want to thank you, man, for being on the show tonight, and I want to turn the tide over to you, turn the table over to you so you can do your thing, my friend. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. So, yeah.
Come on, man. Catch us up a little bit.
All right.
Tell everybody how we met and where you're at, kind of. I want to dive all the way back because as I remember you, when I first met you, you were kind of coming out of a shy shell. And who you are now is very different than the Brian I first met, which is a beautiful sign of growth and transition and development. So share a little bit with us about who you are and kind of give them the 5 minutes steak and sizzle on the elevator ride.
All right, so if I give you 5 minutes right now, myself, I'm a cognitive coach. My name is Brian Lovelace. Been in the fitness world for over 20 years now, man. Every year that goes by, it's like I'm almost as old as you.
Better be careful.
I know.
Moses knows my name.
So I'll tell you that it's been a lot of growth. And when you met me when I was younger, at that time in my life, I truly believed the nightmare I was living was never going to end, and I didn't think anything past how am I going to be able to keep my cell phone bill on. Like
wow.
That's how, where I was focused on and the things that came crashing down on me.
Yeah.
Taking my childhood and what I believed my life was to be, I really didn't believe I had any other kind of opportunity to do some of the things that I was doing. Like when you met me at the gym, at that time in my life, I had just started a family, and at that time I was literally in a place where I really didn't know up from down. I just knew to provide. I knew to provide because I knew what my mom had taught me. So going through that journey when we were there, I went through a lot of different transitions, ended up, I got 2 girls, 12, 16, very bright, beautiful, just vibrant to do a lot of amazing things.
Very challenging age.
Very challenging age. And it's crazy because in what I was engaged in the dialogue, because I wasn't creating at that time, I was engaged. I didn't know that I had the power to create anything or to be able to work through and say, hey, what, there's problems we can work through. I didn't know about thought and the freedom of thought. So at this time, when you met me, I was literally in the shoe boxes, driving down, I was driving 60 miles a day to come into work, and then, I was making nickels and dimes, but it was just like, that's what I knew to do. I didn't think about what I was doing outside of it. I didn't think about what life would look like if I were to, say, be in a place where I could say and express who I was and not be afraid for anything to come back on me. And it was crazy because, as I'm telling you this story right now, this is the first time I've ever told a story from this point, where it started, where I met you. Most people hear the story from, how I became a coach. Why'd you go into coaching?
Right.
Well, working backwards to this process, I got a job position at a little boutique gym, and it had the average client age of like 60 to 80 years old. And it was an opportunity for me at this time. Now, understand at this time, I had, trying to keep it organized, we're not chronological order here. I had came down from Mount Vernon, so understand, 10 years had passed by. I was living up north in this little town, and then all of a sudden, my mom had issues and she was sick, and her husband passed away from lung cancer, and here I was, stepping in and helping out. Now at this time, as I was up there, I had already been going through kind of a process with going through a failed marriage. Now, when I went through this marriage, the kid I was in this relationship, because I was a kid, I had my first at 20 years old.
Man.
I didn't believe I deserved love. I didn't know what love was. I didn't know how to express it. I didn't know how to receive it. Because me receiving love back then was a form of manipulation. That's what I know about myself now that I didn't know before.
Right.
So with this coaching, what I started doing, I started going through every shadow emotion I ever had in my life. And I'm
full of shadow emotion. Yeah.
So a shadow emotion meaning anger, taking anger, abandonment, anxiety, going back to the first time I learned all these things, when I associated a feeling to. So when I could go back to anger, when I felt like I was angry, well, I could think about the time when somebody was calling me names.
Right.
Okay, but then I had to really break that through. If I had to go through, the same feeling like I didn't have any worth, it was probably because I was getting disciplined by my mom for not doing all the stuff was done on the toilet, because here I had a mom working 80 hours a week, raising 3 kids on her own.
So she's teaching you on one side, beautiful discipline, sacrifice for your family. Yeah. Don't ask too many questions, just work your tail off. Qualities that a lot of people don't think of our skin tone of having.
Right.
However, because of that work ethic, you're also missing nutrients out of your diet that are leaving you frail.
You're missing that nurturing side. That typically is very important between mom and children, for sure.
Absolutely, right.
Which is setting you up for the person you become.
Right.
Well, 100%. At that time, though, how I had took that point in my life, I anchored every failed moment that she expressed on me as a part of my character into my life. So,
Brian, I need you to take a moment. I'm sorry, because people aren't going to necessarily understand anchoring, and that this concept and this relative truth is going to set some people free. Because when you're going to explain anchoring, what's going to happen is people are going to realize, man, that's why I love starting the story where we started, where our point of contact is who you've evolved to become. Because I saw you halfway with an anchor in the ground. Walk us through that real quick.
Absolutely. So with that anchor I had in the ground, I literally was carrying a ship behind me. And that ship that I was carrying was every moment where my mother told me that I only did what I wanted to do. I wasn't going to do anything. Nobody's going to help you out. You got to do through doing your own stuff. And that became my core principles, how I live my life. I literally went through my life knowing that if somebody said anything, I knew to make sure that I was ready for whatever they said. So I had a way of cutting people with words to make them feel things by using the information that they gave to me. So with that, here I am carrying this boat of every, whooping. Based on when mom was having a frustrating time, she viewed certain things, that were my fault. And I was doing kid-like mistakes with a mom working 80 hours a week, taking care of both of my sisters. And that's just the life I had. I literally forfeited my childhood to make sure I got home before 3:30. So I was on a varsity chess team. I could have went with it, but I didn't go anywhere. In sports, I only did a couple of sports. So
you're a guy. Tell them real quick, how much do you squat today if you wanted to? How much could you squat? today?
Over 500, about 500 pounds right now.
A very gifted athlete.
Wow.
Who's telling us that he was so anchored that it shaped his mindset to where he never even was able to pursue it. But on the flip side of it, you hear the strategist he is, a master chess player that was never able to pursue that, all because of the associations in his life and the things that developed in his life. Sorry. So crucial, man. Were you bitter as a result of that, or?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I literally, if we just take how I believe my life is supposed to be lived, I'm just going to start here. When I went through life, I was literally this kid that was angry at the world. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel I deserved anything, but I was so used to things always being taken away from me, because every time my mother had gotten a bad relationship and the dudes would get her a cat, she would get rid of the animal. So I associated loss to good things coming to me. I went my entire life just really thinking that was the normal. So with relationships, if I felt like I was going to be hurt, I would hurt them before they could hurt me by leaving their relationship. So there was no trying to, work through problems, because who worked through problems? If people didn't meet up and we didn't match, then it wasn't going to work. When I was working jobs,
Tell it.
When I was working jobs, I went through over 23 jobs.
Oh,
because I didn't know what job I wanted to do, but when I felt like it wasn't enough or I was struggling, I just went to another job. I was the kid that every time I got stressed out and I got angry and I was feeling depressed, and I would change my number. I changed my number over 20 times because I knew that if nobody was reaching out to me or talking to me, I was going to hurt them how they were hurting me by discipline.
Come on.
I spent my entire life coping with all these ways to keep myself in a place where I didn't have to deal with any pain.
Right.
So then when I actually created a family, here I go creating a family where I wasn't even present. Yeah. Because I still believed that the love she was showing me, I had a woman who loved me dearly. And I didn't receive it as love, I received it as manipulation. And one of the things I want to add about my mom, one of the biggest realizations that I had that allowed me to actually heal and to heal with her, was when I realized that her absolute best was exactly what she was giving us.
Wow.
What may have been seen as abuse by other people and stuff like that, that was her definition of discipline. So I didn't see anything deeper than just being disciplined.
That's powerful,
but
man.
That was her best. And when I would talk to my mother about my childhood and actually sharing, hey, Mom, remember this one time? How did you feel? That was the first time I ever heard my mom tell her story about what her brother had did to her and when she finally up and told her dad. So these were moments that I was having in my adult life now. And I was having a conversation with her that she had never had in her life, and not even with professional help. That was one of the things that changed me and my mother's relationship. And now we just have little moments and we can talk about it, laugh about it. And yes, she sometimes feels those emotional up, but I'm able to talk her down because I'm like, you did your best and you only knew him well.
So good, man. Hearing you say that, dang near makes me tear up. Because we've done video, a lot of our life is on forgiveness and how to forgive and being forgiven ourselves. And I think that what you just said is so crucial. In the world that we live in, they don't teach parenting in school.
Right.
It's not like you go to a class to be a great parent. We do what we can to have a baby or not have a baby, and then we are pretty much alone to raise that child.
Yeah. There's no manual.
There's no manual. She has a great blog that she does called Mission Impossible Mom, and it's all about that concept of being a mom is difficult. Being a dad, I'm not dumping on my ladies. I think it's even less strategic. There's even less help for us. We are abandoned in this thing called being a father. And so we have no manual. We have very little help. It's embarrassing to even talk about They call you all kinds of names and out your name, and you're not a real man if that's what you're really focusing on. And so to hear you bring that up, Brian, is so powerful, because I love the reality that you've come to terms with the truth that your mom did what your mom did, not based out of hate or not loving you. It's actually the opposite. She loved you so much she did what she knew how to do. Now, I'm not saying that's right.
Right.
I'm not saying the things that happen in kids' lives, and if there is a child that you know of that is being abused or neglected, get that child some help. That's not what I'm saying, to ignore abuse.
Yeah.
But I am saying on the other side of it, it's so important that we realize that it's okay to forgive our parents, because most of the time they didn't do it out of hate, spite, or something angry that they felt towards us. They may have been angry, but it was anger towards the world and the world that our kids are going to be raised in if they didn't do their very best. And so that's such a powerful point, and I want to thank you for sharing it, even though I'm sure it makes you feel vulnerable, because we love to the level that we are often loved. And sometimes, for me, for instance, I think about this water container, right? This water container is wonderful for me to get a glass of water out of it. But what if I were to try to pour all this water into a shot glass? That water is going to run over.
Yeah.
The problem is that we try to define love by our level of love, by our understanding of love, by our capacity to receive love. Where oftentimes our parents were so abused or so neglected and went through so much, their capacity to receive love is only the size of a shot glass.
Right.
And so we're expecting them to have the same capacity or the same emotion or the same feeling about how to express love, how to express concern, how to discipline correctly, when they never just got those skills.
Well, and I know that the video that we did this last week on forgiveness, we actually kind of talked about that, Brian, about the parent-child relationship. And I know I was kind of talking about my own relationship with my mother and how it took me becoming a mother to see it from a very different perspective, to see it not as a child and the damage that was done growing up. It took me growing up, becoming a mom, and realizing it's hard. Being a parent is really hard, and we do the best that we can. Sometimes we make bad decisions that do affect our children in ways that you regret and you feel sorrow for, but you do the best that you can. And it took me being able to see it from a different perspective to be able to learn to forgive my mom and understand that she did the best she could.
Brian, in this world that we live in right now with COVID and kids are being homeschooled, I know I would never want to be I didn't become a teacher because I didn't want to be with my kids all day.
Yeah,
Tiffany's having a homeschool. There's a lot of parents that are at home homeschooling their kids, trying to run a business or trying to run their job.
Yeah.
But now they're starting to feel like they're really insufficient as a parent because they're juggling a ball that they never. Do you do parenting coaching as well, as far as evaluating relationships and how they're parenting and so forth?
So I dive more into the couples before I get into the parenting, because what I've found is couples, if they don't even understand themselves, how are they going to co-create something?
So
how can two people who don't understand themselves collaboratively go into dialogue to do something they've never done before without having an actual understanding of why they're doing it?
That's good.
And so I start with couples, but it always starts individually, because before you can go down to anything else, it takes somebody being intentional. And if people are half intentional, or if their intention is based off of their limit, that's where we would start.
I love that.
So it goes back to give yourself permission to think and just be open to experiencing something without an expectation of an outcome, except for the unknown.
Wow.
Because I had never received it that way before and in that much abundance. So I literally went through this moment where here I am literally living a life with a boat that I've been anchoring my entire life. for the last 32 years of my life. And then all of a sudden, I'm in a place where I'm taking care of my mom. I'm showing her things she didn't know was possible. We're able to communicate about things that she didn't think was possible. And here we are having moments where I'm just excited to talk about how we're growing. Here it is where I have a failed marriage. I have a 16-year-old who says dad hates her. But I know that there's things that she doesn't understand. And I can't force anything on her, because what mom has created in the household with the person that she's spending her life with the kids, well, now it becomes this thing of, who is she going to be loyal to?
Right.
You know, mom's with them full time. I have my youngest. She's more like you, so when we talk, we just talk, and it's very logical, very methodical. I encourage her to ask questions. And even with my ex now, I'm showing her things she didn't know. But the thing that happened when I said I want to go back in time and I want to make the rights wrong, make the wrongs right, I'm sitting here talking to her and I'm being met with the person where she doesn't want to trust nobody. She's like, I'm not going to trust you. I'm not going to share anything with you. You don't need to know anything about me. You just need to make sure you're here for these kids. And here it is where I'm seeing a direct reflection of who I was 15 years ago, because then she learned how to cope like me.
You know, it's so difficult. People don't realize how much trauma and how many scars follow us from such an early age, and they're just part of our normal life, so we adapt to them like you did with your mother. You know, it was just that was life, and you knew how to adapt to it, but you carried that with you just like everybody else does into other relationships, into being a father yourself. And you know, so many times people are unable to recognize that in themselves or where it comes from. You know, we talk about in psychology, which is of course where my major is coming from, we talk about the fact that it's so difficult to recognize sometimes symptoms. And like you said, anger, you were really angry. Anger is just a symptom, and people always think that that's the issue, but it's not. It's a symptom of something else.
Right.
And it's the something else that people don't bother to discover because they don't know how to, or don't even know where it comes from, and that always carries with them into every aspect of their life. So it's incredible too that you are at a place where you learn to be able to recognize those things, like your anchor, to be able to figure out, okay, this is where it came from. So it allows you the ability to be able to fix it and to, like you said, make right the wrongs that were done. That's such a powerful statement.
So many people are busy trying to clean up the yard from the apples that they don't want.
Right.
They're trying to deal with the fruit of their life.
Yeah.
When they really need to go back and dig up the seed.
Yeah.
They need to analyze, where did this apple come from? Where did this orange come from? Where did this hatred come from? This anger? Where did this way that I respond to my now ex-wife? Where did it come from? Brian, you're on a lifeline right now for some people, because if we can get them to go back and not destroy the soil, not destroy the tree, just go back to the seed, change the dynamic of the way that we perceive the seed, turn it into some appreciation, gratitude. All of a sudden, the fruit that I see so evident in your life right now, all of a sudden it becomes so drastically different. And I'm so proud of you. I didn't mean to interrupt you, and I know she didn't,
you're good,
but please, it's so powerful what you're sharing.
So good.
I want our audience to experience the fullness of not only the pain, but the realization I can change that. That's so powerful.
100%. I mean, that's it. You said something, Richard. Perception. You know, and Tiffany, you spoke to the part where saying, okay, let's question. Let me question what it is I'm feeling in that feedback loop, right? That symptom, which is the emotion being expressed. Yeah. But let's go ahead and figure out what we're associating it to. Well, how did I get to that point in the realization of what you're saying? Yeah. And that's where it came in being, you know, it started in 2013. Let me tell you where it started. This is good. Now I know. In 2013, I was driving to Deception Pass to jump off a bridge. Okay, I literally checked out. I said, this is it. I remember on that day I said, God, what the do you want from me? And my phone didn't ring for 13 hours. Now take in mind, me and my mother hadn't been speaking for 2 years. Okay, because we're dealing with our childhood issues and nobody wanted to talk about it, so then everybody disconnected. Here it was where I was sitting here going through a failed marriage and not knowing what to do. These were all things that were happening. This was the first Christmas where I didn't have money to give it to my kids for Christmas, and I was feeling like a failure to man because the only way that I knew to show love was through money. If I bought something, that showed money. But so here it was where I couldn't even get my kids anything, and here I am driving the Deception Pass, and as I'm speeding through
which is so common amongst men.
Right? So I'm speeding through these lights, and I realized, somebody came over and said, hey, don't speed through the lights, because this is not anybody else's burden to bear. So as I was driving up the Deception Pass, here it is where my life flashes before my eyes, where I actually made it to the bridge. Now, Deception Pass is this big bridge, and it's got a huge drop-off, and it's probably 100% fatality rate.
Yeah.
And as I was driving up there, I envisioned my death. I actually envisioned me jumping and feeling the concussion from the water and hearing that whoosh of it, that whoosh. And it was just a bright light. And by the time I had drowned, here I was looking at my daughter 20 years later asking why I did it. Now at this time, I was actually a part of a speed skating team because here I was trying to find my purpose through saying I want to be able to share with people what it's like to come from the broken side of the fence. This was my mission statement in 2009. And when that moment happened, I had all these kids that were, super inspired by me. And I saw them all asking why I jumped too. So
see, that's so important, though, Brian, that you can have everything in the world's mind together. Mm-hmm. You can be as high success in the minds of the children that were looking at you, and on the inside still be anchored to brokenness.
Yeah,
that's so powerful.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And that was a thing, right? So when 2013 was the year I actually started seeking answers outside of the answers that I was believing were true. 2013 is when I literally looked at every moment in life and said, wait a minute, if death doesn't scare me, what's another reason to be excited for living? So here I was on 2013 driving to this bridge, and I was hopped up on a flu med because that was the last time I had the flu. Thank God with everything happening now. And here it was where it was 32 degrees outside of ice. Mm-hmm. So I decided to go for a 32-mile bike ride. And I said, okay, on this bike ride, if I hit black ice, it's going to be looked at as an accident. Mm-hmm. If I go into cardiovascular shock from all the flu meds, it's going to look like an accident.
Right.
But when I finished that bike ride, every question I ever had was answered leading up to that day. When I said, what do you want from me? The answer I got back that day was, you are a rock in a room looking for a rock bigger than you. And you're not going to find it because that's exactly why you're where you're at. And if you're looking for the rocks, you will be surrounded by rocks, and that's what leadership is going to do. Well, at that time, I asked, what do you want from me? He didn't give me an answer until about 2018. Which, kind of brought me to this point where I'm at here. But, after that happened, I was always looking and seeking in every little moment. Like, it was something about accepting and envisioning and just accepting death and no longer being afraid of it. Because now I didn't care. Every time I jumped in my car days after, I look at a wall at 100 miles an hour and be like, you know what? Not that hard to do, but why am I excited to be here?
Yeah.
What do I have to be excited about to be here? Because, death is the one thing that people spend their entire lives, infatuated with. What am I going to be doing if that's not it?
It's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the elements that we talk a lot about, even on our podcast, is a concept called memento mori. Mm-hmm. And that concept is the very nature that death is always present with us, in the sense that death could be today. So what we have is a responsibility to live our fullest life.
Well, there was a story of a shark survivor, somebody who was attacked by a great white shark, and he made a statement that just blew my mind, and it's crazy that we don't already think like this, right. But he said, until you conquer your fear of death, you do not truly live.
Gosh.
That is absolutely powerful, yeah.
People are so afraid of dying that they never truly live. So, I mean, when he said that, I mean, it just literally just blew my mind.
One of the things, and I my prayer, my positive thought for everyone is that they'll never get to this broken moment.
Right.
But is to visualize your death. Write down your death. Write down the loss of life. Write down the moment at your grave, what you feel, what others feel around you. Because in some senses, Brian, you buried the old you in that moment and began to ask that very pivotal question, what am I supposed to be excited about life for? You said earlier in the sentence, it's just one word, knowing. Everything I was knowing, everything I knew, everything I believed, and once you know too much, you can never really change. But once you open your mind up to why am I living? What is there to be excited about life about? Even in these crazy times, Brian, I'm excited right now. I'm like, okay, what else can I do? What else can I take on? Brian's inspiring me just by the way that you're thinking about life and what you're excited about.
And I want to capitalize on something you said, because let's go back to the word perspective. What I've learned, and this is what I do as a cognitive coach, what we're experiencing right now is what it looks like when I coach. It requires a little bit of sharing for people to actually connect and to create that space. And what I've learned about perspective is when I went to Deception Path, the old me was not buried. It was washed clean.
That's good.
And that old me was able to take all those lessons that I learned and use them as a positive tool. Because what I learned about the old version of me is how I weaponize, how I cope. So if I had the gift of gab, because I remembered every time my mother would say, it was your fault, you did this, I developed a videographic memory. So I can remember a conversation down to the T. I'll forget your name in 2 minutes, but I'll remember the conversation for a lifetime.
The details, the emotions, the feelings, Right? And they were always triggered by emotions. Anytime it was emotional, I'd automatically start recording. Because I was very meticulous about what I said. So my definition of anger was even, the way I expressed anger was different than most people. Because when I was angry, I became very articulated, very calm. And I was very intentional with every word I said. Because the one thing that I learned about people is, well, what I learned about people is I knew how it made me feel when people would say things that they didn't mean when they were angry. So I said, I'm not going to do that. So that when anybody ever got me angry, anything that I said, I meant it. And I made that my staple to life. I say, if I say anything, I'm not the person to say something out of slip of tongue because I'm angry. No, what I say, I mean. So I never told people I hate you. I never told people, you know what, I hope you die. Those things I just never said. Because I knew that I don't take back what I said. And you were specific in the pain you delivered.
I was very specific in how I cope with not showing a certain kind of emotion. Because I believe that if I handle things logically and I approach things with a logical approach, nobody could tell me I was wrong. So I stopped talking and sharing my emotions with people, and then I started to take and get upset with people as a pet peeve when people were telling me how I felt, because I was never expressing myself. So then as I began to, come into myself and really take and reinvestigate everything like Deception Path, I had to go back to what I call them key moments. And in my life, I can tell you every key moment that I've ever experienced in my life, because of the videographic memory that got me to where I'm at. Because when I met you, it was a key moment in that. Because the one thing that I saw with you when I first met you was you always were ready to encourage. You were already ready to lift it up. And every time I was around you, I felt like it was a brick brother trying to say, come on, brother, you got this. That's what I remember from you. That's what you gave me every time I was around you. But that was the key moment. So with my entire life, it's those little key moments. And Deception Path is one of them. But everything that came thereafter, because I was open to receiving ideas outside of my own, it gave me something to entertain in a way that once I actually entertained it enough, I hit this transition when I did all these sports. Okay, I became a national ranked pool player. I was a speed skater, and I was training for the Olympics for that. And then I went to track cycling. But the only reason I was doing those things was because I was trying to find a way to prove my worth. I didn't know what my worth was, so anything I ever did, people told me, they go, man, everything you do, you get really good at it. Mm-hmm. And that's all I knew, but that was how I was coping with trying to find who I was and what my worth was. But I started to...
So your excellence was actually a deficiency almost, in the sense that you were missing so much out of your stability, your personal peace, your personal well-being, to where the way that you coped was over-excelling in the eyes of others.
Absolutely. Because it was about, I want to get some praise. I want people to let me know where I'm at. I need somebody to affirm my identity because I did not have an identity to articulate.
Brian, it's so powerful.
So, that's the one thing that I found is, saying, okay, do I need to have somebody tell me good job? Or what? Well, here it was. When I was training in the speed skating, I had a lot of key moments there. When I started skating there, I was met with, I don't know why you're skating, you're too big to skate. Like, I had people always trying to, they didn't understand my why. Mm-hmm. Then I was always being met with somebody else's belief of what they knew as their confidence that was being projected onto me. It was being projected onto me, and it was causing me to push even harder.
And when people don't understand your why, they sabotage you.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, they what I realize is I can never say a person intentionally tries to harm me if they're only acting from a place that they know so intimately. And if it's something they don't understand, what do people do with stuff they don't understand? Stay in a place of comfort. Yeah. And so what I realize is I can no longer associate how a person made me feel. Meaning, if I feel like they're sabotaging me, that's because there's something I'm insecure about, I'm feeling inadequate about, I'm not confident about, because how can a person make me feel unless I allow them to let me feel it? Now, these were things I learned, in the last 3 years. What you hear right now is a story being told with 4 years of hard work, but I'm able to reflect on everything in my life with the director's cut. Because when I started to look at with every moment that I was able to look back at, I realized that moment led to that moment, that led to that moment, and the commonality in every moment was me. So then when I realized that I was at the center of every moment, I was at the center of every relationship, I was at the center of every time I felt like I didn't have what it took. Well, how do you have what it takes if you don't even know what you're trying to bring? Mm-hmm. It was one of those things where I was literally combating myself with a bunch of unknowns that when I slipped into this coaching game, it was literally after 2013, the world became a social experiment for me. Mm-hmm. And everything I did, because I hit a point when I was skating, and I just started having these epiphany moments. I started realizing that, okay, I can control what I'm doing. I can control what I perform at. People don't know how to coach me because I have a different body type, but I have a brain where I can continue to learn because I had the training background to help me out. So people were wondering how I was able to advance when I wasn't training on the thing. I was the guy who skated with a no-name brand, and I had a custom-made suit just to prove a point. Right. Okay, so then here I was out here encouraging and inspiring people to do things, and I was the guy that people were just always like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. When I look back at it now, I was like, man, I really believed I was going to the Olympics. I really believed that there was nothing that was going to stop me from getting there. Like, when I swapped over to track cycling, it's because trying to be a working class parent and a working class athlete, and then trying to do it, it's not going to work because you got to go to the residency program. Mm-hmm. So then I got recruited by the Olympic track cycling coach when I was out in Salt Lake City, and I was like, you know what? He's like, you got the body, do it. I was like, why not? Then I got sponsored with a team in Canada. I grew some more. Because here it was getting love from another country more than the people that were giving that I actually lived at.
Yeah.
And then I was just growing there. But then the growth was happening with the relationships and then the failed relationship. And when the team we ultimately separated, I remember going through these other moments. But now understand, this is 2 years now after my January 2nd, 2013. Mm-hmm. About a year after that, my mom calls me and she says, her husband passed away. And I was upset because I know my mom, and I go, man, he really put work in. Like he really stuck by her side, and I wanted to be, at least, if anything I could have said to him, even though I had moved out at 17, I was a high school dropout, I lived out of a car. I mean, I went to a place where I was literally, here I was going into the world of the entertainment world where dancing was the way to go. Like I was Magic Mike'ing my way through things. But it was all these little things that just kept happening. And by the grace of God, I didn't end up behind somebody's gun. Like right. I was blessed enough not to end up in the system, and I was blessed enough not to end up dead. But at the same time, I wasn't seeking those kind of issues. I was really, if anything that I took from my childhood growing up was, just, take care of you because nobody's going to take care of you. And friends are fair weather. You got to accept that. I took that as my staple to living. So with all these little jobs I did, the change, where did the change happen? The change in my life happened in the last 4 years where I get this job at the gym and all I wanted was an opportunity. Give me an opportunity. Give me a chance.
Gosh.
And going into this, it's a predominantly white community. Average age is like 55. Mm-hmm. Here I come in there, this black buff kid, and I'm about to, tell people what to do.
It's powerful.
And when I came in there, like even down to the process of the interviewing process, it was 7 interviews, and I was like, man, that's a lot of interviews. Mm-hmm. But I remember there was a key moment that happened. And the owner had asked me, he goes, I got to ask you a question. He goes, and I was like, yeah. He's like, why are you excited to wake up in the morning? And it was the first time I had ever been asked that question in my life. Now, the thing about my brain is when I pause for 10 seconds, that's a lifetime. That's 3 hours of dialogue. So here it was, where in the breath when I thought in my head, like, why would he ask that question? I said to him, I wake up every morning for a chance to innovate, inspire, while listening, learn, to grow, to be the best version of myself, because that's inclusive of everything that I do. And if I can do at least one of those things every day, I'm living my best intentional life.
That's good.
That was the first time I articulated out my why. And then I had an aha moment. And I said, with that aha moment, if a person doesn't speak it, okay, how can they take that vibration and actually manifest something from it? So that all of a sudden, I was like, oh my gosh, if I can articulate these things out, I now have a actionable place to go to for power when I'm feeling like my life is falling apart, because I knew what my state was.
That clarified vision, yeah.
Right?
One thing from listening to your story, Brian, that I think is amazing, I think it's important to point out, is that the funny thing is we always talk about children being sponges, right? Especially the first 5 years of their life. They're these giant sponges, and they absorb all this knowledge and skills and all this stuff that just seeps into them. And listening to you, it sounds like you became a sponge as an adult. And the crazy thing is you don't see that very often. It's typically the opposite. As we get older into adulthood, we become more cynical, we become more closed-minded, we become more opinionated, more set in our ways, as everybody likes to say. Right. And listening to you and your experiences and you talk, that was kind of like the imagery that popped into my head, is you're just like this giant sponge. because you're not afraid to open yourself up and learn everything that you can. And, you know, whether it's something that you're going to do for the rest of your life, or it's just a hobby, or just anything, you are just so hungry to learn and to expand, you know, that you want to soak it all in. So, like, it just, that imagery came in that you were just like a giant adult sponge, and so many adults need to become more like that. Absolutely. Because it allows us to open our minds and see the world very differently. And so I think that is such a great platform for you and to continue on with, because it's amazing.
What was most difficult for you? Because I know that everybody's going to face it a little bit different if they decide, hey, I want to be like Brian. Mm-hmm. I want to become that sponge. Right. I want to say, you know what? I know I got anchors. I wake up angry. I wake up disfocused. I wake up frustrated. I wake up in a place where I'm confused about the life I'm living and why I'm living it. Yeah. I want to be a sponge. What's the most difficult, not only emotions, but logical process that they're going to run into? Is it pain? Is it fear of pain? Is it consistency? Is it habits? What for you, and I know it'll be different for other people, so maybe you can roll that out, but what for you, and then what for other people, what can they expect to experience? Because if I wake up thinking, okay, I'm going to put my hand to the plow, I'm going to plow a new field, and I'm going to get a new crop, and I'm going to live a new life, and then they don't know what it feels like to get a sliver in their hand from the plow, right. All of a sudden they're going to put their hand on that plow and start plowing. They're going, oh, no, that's not for me. Yeah. It's more comfortable to be in my old place. Yeah. How did you break through all that? Mm-hmm. And what mindset did you need?
What I'll speak to on that is, I'm going to share from when I arrived to that definition. Where you're asking the question to is when I arrived to that definition. Mm-hmm. When I was, to speak to what you were saying earlier, Tiffany, when I was being a sponge, that was me seeking. Because here it was where I knew death is not just the worst that can happen.
Right.
And I said, if I'm going to do anything, why not just have fun while you do it? You know, if you can focus on all these other things, then why not just dive into something and just say, okay, let me see how many ways I can prove myself wrong. Because I literally went into situations to prove myself wrong. I'm going to fail. Let me prove myself wrong that I'm not. You know, that's how I managed it in it was the lesser spectrum of healthy. Mm-hmm. You know, because now, where I'm at now, I say, how many ways can I prove myself right?
Yeah, right.
Because trying to prove yourself right when you don't have any confidence in what's happening is like, I hope this doesn't go bad, but I hope I can at least get there. Well,
the one good thing and healthy thing about that, though, is that there's two sides to every quarter, right?
Right.
We always talk, and we did a discussion the other night where we talked about glass half empty, glass half full. Yeah. But the truth of the matter is, if you take a half empty glass and you take a half full glass, you got a full glass of water. So what you got to do is you got to learn how, yes, we want to stay positive, but even your negative side of the quarter, where you said, how can I prove myself wrong or right? By applying that to your life, it energized you for massive action. And action is what makes you succeed in life.
Yeah.
100%, right? And then that's what, to piggyback off of that, absolutely, two sides to the coin. And the coins that I was looking at is one coin is for surviving, and one side is for empowerment.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good, man.
I was working from a place where I was surviving my entire life.
Yeah.
Every time somebody said, what are you doing? How are you doing? I was like, I'm surviving. And what I realized was our words are our power. So if we're saying, I call those disempowering words. If I'm surviving, I'm disempowering myself. But if I'm overcoming an obstacle I've never done before, and I'm a little worried, I'm still operating from a place of volition and empowerment. So these things became this, when I became NLP, you know, I decided to go into the neurolinguistics of the brain. And what I found next was, linguistically, we are being programmed and constantly disempowered. Like with, I say this, the word that I had to get rid of was surviving, broken. Because how can you be broken if you're still breathing? Yeah. How can you be broken if you've never done it before? How can you be broken because of somebody else's projected pain? But I do say I am learning.
Good, Brian.
I'm healing. I am now healing. Mm-hmm. I'm healing from a moment because I'm always operating from a place of empowerment. You know, and what I realize is, how do I get a person from here to there? Well, let's start with saying, give yourself permission to think different.
Man, that's powerful.
Because that's where it starts with everything. If one is not willing to entertain a thought for at least a minute, how will they ever get a different result?
Yeah.
You know,
so
because
good.
now it becomes that thing about courage. I think, well, how do you find courage if there's no courage? Well, what does courage mean to a person? I know what courage means to me. Courage means that nothing's going to stop me, and I used to operate with it and say perseverance. Mm-hmm. But now when I look at taking a courageous step, I look at taking that, you know, I look at it as pioneering. I get to go a place in my life and in my thought and in my process of thought in a way that nobody else is doing. And for the first time in my life, when I talk to 99% of the people, I know they've never heard these words be said the way I'm saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the truth that I'm living from the inside out. But I didn't realize I was living from the outside in until I realized that the people that I was starting to outgrow, because I was growing within, that people started to respond to me differently. And then it became, again, going back to that sponge moment, because I'm seeking in every moment. Here it was where I realized that when people talk about themselves, they'll sometimes talk about other people in third party. So the world, the people suffer with this. Most people go through this. And what I realized is if my perspective gives me a life completely different, then I've just completely made their statement void. Mm-hmm. Because to speak for everyone else, you have to be everyone else. So people share from what they intimately know or a shared experience. So third person talking, I know they're talking about themselves. When people tell me that I look like I'm angry, I know they're associating a certain mannerism to what they know themselves. People can't tell me that I feel a certain way if I know the intention of why I go into a certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
So to be
they're basing that based on their experience.
Everything is going to be based on somebody else's experience. Anytime somebody tells me they don't like what I'm doing, how can somebody tell me I'm doing something wrong when I'm the one doing it and creating it?
Yeah.
It's like being an artist. You can't tell an artist he's doing it wrong when he has his own way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets a beautiful picture every time.
It is.
You know?
It's kind of like this guy. I see him on the internet. I love watching him. He's always got little kids with him. He'll take some crazy dirt or mud or whatever he's doing, and he'll put it upside. He paints the picture upside down and backwards, and then he flips it right at the very end. And you're like, how is that a face of somebody? Not only is it a face of somebody, it's that little girl's face. And it's so shocking because from your perspective, he's just throwing mud on the wall, or he's just throwing objects on the wall. Where in reality, the perspective, when you flip it, and what you do is you shift it, but you shift it, you change it, and you say, you know what, I'm going to have an open mind. I'm going to have a sponge mind mentality. For Brian, he's more powerful than he gives himself credit for. He even knows, because what happens is all of a sudden now you can flip it into art. You can flip it into beauty. You can flip it into creativity. You can flip it into something so valuable that people are shocked who you were, but you've been in front of them the whole time. It's just their perception or my perception of them has blocked my ability to see it because of my experiences. Not because of theirs, but because of my experiences. I decide I'm going to limit that person. Now all of a sudden they flip it on me, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Keep flipping it, Brian.
All right, well, I know I'm going to keep flipping. Which is exactly what's happening with every word, right? If you take every word so far, I've turned it into an empowerment. I can take my coping mechanisms that I use my videographic memory to weaponize, how I learned how to turn my emotions off. You know, these things, I learned how to turn my emotions off when I was young because I learned how to stop crying when I was getting a whooping. So all of a sudden, here it was where I used that coping switch so that when anybody felt like they were hurting me, I would just turn it off and abandon them how I would be hurt. And if I were in a place where somebody I felt like they were attacking my integrity, I didn't know it was integrity at the time. I just knew that they were attacking when I knew I was doing it with a good intent, because I was told young, if I did something wrong as a kid, you just do what you don't listen. So then that became a trigger for me. So that when people would do that, I would be like, you know what? And then I would cut back with all these other words. They would speak to intimate details about them in a way that flipped it as I weaponized it. So when I realized that
I love what you're saying about the words, because, and I just want to hit on that a little bit more because of how powerful it is. You know, I grew up with a lot of negativity in my home, and you don't realize that you adapt that becomes part of your normal thinking. And I know Richard can attest for this, but he had to really help me break myself out of that habit, because I didn't even realize that I was doing it. And, you know, he would always speak into me how powerful words are, and your perception of it, and what it makes you think when you say them, and the mindset that it puts you in when you believe those words. And so, you know, I just really want to reiterate that, because our audience is listening. I want them to really grasp the power of what you're saying in this, is that we breathe life into the words that we speak. Yeah. And we take that on into ourselves, on how we feel about ourselves, how we view things. We become those words. And so, you know, I just really want to just reiterate that and have everybody really focus what you're saying, Brian, because words can dramatically change your life. And
the way you use those words.
The way you use them. And, you know, like I said, Richard, it took a while. Early in our relationship, we kind of didn't flow real well because of it, because, you know, he's this motivational, empowering guy, as you know him to be, you know, and I tended to be more on the negative side, not meaning to be, not trying to be. It just
saying, what do you mean?
It was just ingrained in me to think that way. And so it took a while for me to really consciously make decisions and choices on the words that I used and the words I chose to breathe life into. So I think that's a really great statement for you to make, and really to speak that to our listeners, because I think that's such a valuable concept.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. As a young person, what I would do is every football season, after I got into 7th grade, I would literally go after my hair started falling out, at least, because my afro was so precious to me, Brian. I would go in, and every beginning of every football season, I would shave my head. And this goes beyond self-talk. It really goes into weaponizing your words, like you're talking about. I would get in the mirror, and I would say some of the foulest, dirtiest, just nasty-spirited words into the mirror, looking at myself about who I was as a human being. And it would literally transform me for the football season. It would change the way that I perceived myself during football. Once I figured out, and this is what's so powerful and what Brian is so good at teaching people how to do and how to activate their words through NLP, and he'll probably talk more about the shift, but it would transform me. It would change me into a different human being. Once I learned that you can do the same thing as a husband, you can do the same thing as a father, you can do the same thing as an employee, you can do the same thing as an entrepreneur, all of a sudden you can, not literally if you don't want to, but you can begin to shave your head, change your perception, change your vision point, and then all of a sudden begin to look into the mirror and not only just kind of self-talk like, I'm a good person, I feel good today, it's going to be an excellent, wonderful day. You can literally begin to weaponize your words against anything you want to, or more specifically, a better way of saying it rather than weaponize is turn your words into tools that begin to build the world around you that you want.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm blown away by what you're bringing, Brian. Normally it's ethereal, it's high level stuff, it's this stuff that people conceptually read in a book, but you're bringing it right down into our playground, and I'm loving it, man. You're not leaving with this. You're not leaving my sandbox with your toys. I'm going to keep them.
Hey, you know what? That's exactly why I'm here, though, right? That's my purpose, is to be able to share this, but to speak to those words, though. Something else that's really important with words is for two people to go intention, because I deal with intentional communication as well. And the one thing I've learned with, understanding another human being is it takes one intentional person to make a situation go. Now, if they can take turns, great. But if one person's intentional, the relationship will always work. Because now it either becomes you either conform or you surround yourself with a solid fear. So what happens now is taking the time to understand what a word means to another person. Because as one might say success, I know that success associated for someone else might be security and stability. And success for me is freedom.
Yeah.
I know that my definition of happiness is enlightenment. But I know that some people's definition of happiness is a family. So it becomes these things of, taking and saying, okay, if family is your definition of happiness, why does it make you happy? What do you feel? Because the thing that I learned about talking to other grown men and then talking to women in this day and age is nobody knows how to talk about their feelings. And to really dive into those feeling words, like I say, I'm absolutely elated to be sitting here in front of you guys right now, because never in my wildest dreams did I believe that my voice actually had power, that I could deliver something that would actually help transform the lives of many. I didn't believe that 10 years ago. Because I believed the nightmare I was living was never going to end. So that when we take somebody who's saying, okay, how do I get to this point in my life? How do I change my life? Well, it first starts with saying, start with the shadowy emotions first. Start with the things you know so intimately. Because if I ask somebody what their definition of anger is, or how it makes them feel, what do they do when they're angry, they're going to give me 100+ words. But when I say, what does happiness look like, they'll give me a word like joy.
Yeah.
Where do we go where if we're speaking to the depth of our actual communication with each other as human beings, now we're going back to the human experience. Because, we can take morality, and if you removed it from society, everybody's right. Because it's all based on everybody's perspective.
Yeah.
So if somebody's looking at judgment, well, if somebody's fearing judgment from other people, that's probably because they compare themselves to see if they measure up all the time to other people.
Good.
It's not that they're afraid that people are going to judge them. It's that, do I equal up to what they might expect from me? And what I do with the coaching is I get people to focus on the why they're thinking that way. Because I can say, I'm tired of people taking advantage of me, but I'm going to say, are you setting boundaries? Because these things go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And if people aren't being intellectually, what I say is people aren't being intellectually challenged enough. Like to actually have a thoughtful conversation, to actually ask questions when somebody says a phrase, and I can say, no, that's not what it means to me. This is what that word means to me.
For example, when you're rolling that out, and I can't help myself but think it, is you're telling someone, hey, Tiffany, I'm tired of you taking advantage of me. But the other expression of it really is, hey, we've set boundaries. This is the application of words, where now you're crossing those boundaries.
Right.
Learning how to have shared communication about what those boundaries mean, why those boundaries exist, and why they're valuable to the development and the maturity from both perspectives of this relationship. And what you're sharing is so good. And that only comes from deep talk. See, right now in the world that we live in today, Brian, it's easier to get somebody to sext with you. Is that what they call it? Sexting?
Yeah.
It's easier to get somebody sexting with you. They'll show you every part of their body.
Yeah.
Within, if you got some slick sexting game, they'll give you everything you got in an hour, whatever it takes. I don't know. But to get them to really share what words mean to them.
Yeah.
Love. What does love mean? It means I'm gonna make you some pancakes in the morning? No, that's not what love means to me. We better start this conversation at a whole nother level.
Right.
I don't want you to ever lie to me.
Yeah.
I would never lie to you.
Right.
You told me you were going to the store and you ended up at the hair salon for 6 hours. That's not a lie. That was a change. I changed my mind.
Change of plans.
Damn it, you lied to me. I don't know how you define a lie. Let me clearly define my boundaries.
and I want to speak to that right there. I'm gonna go 5 levels deeper than that. Is when we speak to expectations. What I've learned about expectations is if people don't expect of themselves, why do they always go in expecting from others that they don't even give to themselves?
Come on, man.
Yeah,
this becomes
so
a thing where people are going into relationships talking about boundaries when they don't even respect or give the self-care or the work and time to be still to themselves.
So
and
good.
Then we watch relationships where what I see, when I see people moving, all I see is brains and a bunch of electrical lights.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see 2 couples in a relationship, 2 people in a relationship, all I see is brains talking, and the things that are being missed or the things that aren't being expressed, where it actually requires people to feel safe within themselves to actually express themselves. So when people go into like saying, okay, when I go into a relationship, let's go deeper than that. What do I expect for myself? Because if I can't even articulate out loud what I expect for myself, how can I go into and I have boundaries when I know that the boundaries are just to avoid all the bad feelings that I never want to feel again? Because the thing I learned about pain is pain has an origin, and we can associate a lot of things to that very moment in time that speak to that pain. But what happens when you're doing something new for the first time, it triggers that same physiological thing of pain.
Right.
Where all of a sudden, just 2 weeks ago, almost 48 hours ago, I was feeling stuck. I was feeling stuck because here it was where I was doing all these things. I got this job, everything's coming together, and I'm feeling that old kid version of myself saying, man, you got to make a change because it feels like the walls are closing in. Mm-hmm. But what I learned about that feeling is every time I broke through a glass ceiling, that's when I had that same feeling, because that's when I felt like I was stuck, because that's when I had to push. And what I realized about people living a life centered around avoiding all the things that they know they don't like, it bleeds into moments that triggers those same feelings, and therefore they jump away from an opportunity when it's doing it with a different intent.
Yeah, back them up.
Now we're going right back to intention. If I'm going into a dialogue with another human being and I can't even talk about how it makes me feel with certain things, but I say I have boundaries, and then I say I have boundaries, but the words of boundaries to what things they might have boundaries to don't align because we don't have an understanding of each other's codex and how we speak. Well, now we're speaking with words that only we know what it means, and then people are arguing, blaming each other for not acknowledging what they were saying. Because what is it? Every human being wants to be acknowledged. Right? So if you take any kind of argument that happens, if you say, okay, I'm in a relationship and things are hard and I don't know how to get through my partner, try acknowledging them and then asking a question just to make sure you understand what they're saying, so that when it's happening, you can be like, okay, they mean like they're feeling tired and lazy. They're not upset or bored. They're tired or lazy. That makes sense to me. Not a big deal.
Let me give them their space.
Right? Because nobody truly goes into something trying to be mad. It is not in human nature to just be mad. Human nature is to nurture. Human nature is to give. Human nature is to want to share and have experience. And human nature is to feel good. So when people are going through these moments, trying to figure out what they're going to get from this moment and that moment, it becomes this thing of saying, let me challenge you to actually talk about what a good moment might actually feel like to you if you had it happen right now.
Man.
Because now what I found there is people don't know what to say next. And that might be a place where I start. Because when people are able to articulate, much like the time when I was asked a question, why are you excited to wake up? That key moment changed my perspective on everything I did in my life. So that when I was having a bad day, I go, can I innovate? Can I inspire? Can I listen to learn? Okay, can I do some kind of growth? Okay, am I inclusive of what I'm doing? And if I was following those things there, I had empowerment.
Right. You know you're on track.
Right? And I didn't know that that's what had happened until I started doing more work. So then, back at this gym, understand, all that stuff happened because of those little moments at the gym that I was at. Now, I had a class. I gotta tell this story because this was a moment. This was a growth moment. This was an aha moment. I'm teaching this class, and it's, you know, it's like the silver sneakers of classes, right? And there's a character of people in there. I don't know about you, but if you've ever been to a community where everybody's older, it's like getting vetted for a gang. Like you get in there and you got like a room full of 60, 70-year-olds. If they don't know you, they're going to let you know. Well, I had a trainer quit. Now, when I went into this gym, I said, the one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to teach a class. Because I got a trainer here, and it's a small boutique gym, and then the trainer has been asking for like months to be a trainer. I understand I've only been there for a month. He's been asking for months to be a trainer, and then he quits. Now here I am sitting here going, oh my goodness, my biggest fear has come to life, and I now have to teach this class. So understand.
It's kind of abandoned me.
Class now. It's 60, 70, 80-year-olds. Now understand, I've never taught a silver sneakers in my life. Here I am frantically the night before saying, okay, how can I communicate? Because now I'm working on intentional communication. This is why I'm learning the fundamentals to how to be a person who communicates through the thick and thin, so that it's always inclusive, so that they can always feel like I'm being transparent, so that they can feel safe to share back with me. Like, I'm already doing these things just because if I try to avoid this, it's not going to work. So how do I address it without over-promising?
Yeah.
I go in there, I'm on YouTube, Googling classes, watching people sitting in chairs, listening to 80s music, trying to figure out how to come up with the right thing. And I'm like, I got to put a class together and be ready for these people to go, because I did a couple of classes for choreographing, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing here, but I know I want to speak to the brain, because I had just read a great book called Brain Rules. And Brain Rules was a great book because it just spoke to, just breaking down how the brain works. Like just basics of how the brain works. Now, how did I
I've been missing it. It was on my shelf for years, a black book with red lettering. But I don't know why it stands out to me, but it's a great book.
So now here it is now, where the reason I got to this point with using intentional communication is because during one of my other key moments of playing pool, I became a ranked pool player. I went to this tournament. It was like 140 people. And I remember I went in there and I said, I'm going to win this thing. And understand, I've never won any tournament in my life. And I ended up getting 7th out of 140 people.
Wow, that's impressive.
It absolutely blew my mind, because then all of a sudden, my pool game went up because I read another book called Pleasures of Small Motion. And that was the first time that I realized that reading books, this is back in 5 years ago, I had only read maybe 8 books. Not even that, let's be real. In the 20 years prior to that, I probably read 5 books.
Wow.
Okay, so here I am, where I read this one book, Pleasures of Small Motion, and it spoke to something. It was speaking to the psychology of, when you play pool. Now, if anybody's seen pool, you got a stick, you got a ball on the table, and you got to hit the 8 ball in the corner last. And it's a game where everything you do is very consistent. You do the same stroke every time. It's like golf. It's very focused, and if you're not there, if your mind wanders, you miss 90% of the time. Well, that came in play with this class now, and I'm like, okay, you got to give these guys a workout. I put on my AC/DC, and I was in there ready to rock and roll, and I'm just talking them through it. I'm grabbing extra weights. I'm giving people extra weight. And the one thing that I said to the receptionist was, if anybody has any problems, make sure they come up to me and let me know, because I want to hear the good, the bad, the in-between. Well, here it goes. The day after the class, I felt like I rocked it. I was like, I did a good job. I mean, first time, I can get better. I learn it. I master things quickly. So this is nothing that I haven't done with my entire coping life. So I'm like, I got this.
I can adjust.
Well,
I can adjust. So, I can do what I got to do. Good.
Right? Exactly. So here it was now, where reception comes back and goes, hey, I know you have problems. Now, understand, I'm dealing with personalities at this point. A lot of different personalities. This personality happens to be a person who talks, and then they kind of keep talking after, and you're like, I got it, you're good, goodbye. And I have a client in front of me, and his name's Bob. I understand. Bob, when I see older folks, all I see is their teenager self. So he looked like a jock. I was like, oh man, he looked like he was a stud back in high school, right? He's 60-something years old, and I'm like, man, I can see it. And he's like, I want to let you know that my back is hurting, and it's sore here, and I've been working out for a long time, and I don't need to get big. And in my mind, he wasn't what I was experiencing at this time. Now understand, being a black male in a predominantly white community, I had to go into every piece of myself, not to be a victim in a moment where somebody wasn't giving me eye contact and they were building with confidence. And I had to accept it and look at it as, this is what it looks like when somebody is doing something for the first time and they don't know how to interact. So here it is where I said, bring conflict to me, bring complaints to me, and here it is where it's happening. So I'm getting exactly what I asked for. I'm like, man, God, you answered quick. So I'm getting everything that I asked for, and now all of a sudden now, the receptionist comes back in. She goes, hey, you wanted to talk about people if they had problems? Well, I have a couple of other people from the class. Now, at this point, it's feeling like a survival tribunal meeting. And I go from feeling like I've done a great job to you need to find a hole. And I remember, and them saying, well, it's too hard, it's too much. You gotta be a little nicer. Like, we're not, we're like 60 years old. I'm like, okay, I was just, where are you, sir? We're sir here. I'm like, you're supposed to be. But in my mind,
that was the class.
That's what I was thinking in my mind, right? But what I said to them, because now I'm learning about intentional communication, and everybody's a social experiment at this point in my life, and I'm like, I'm sorry, that I pushed you up. You felt like you were pushed hard. I was just really trying to give you a best workout. I will definitely dial it back, and I'll figure this out. That was my response, right? So knowing that sometimes I don't have to express frustration, but I can graciously deal with something. So if there's conflict, I can be gracious in how I deal with it, and I don't have to meet it with the same force I learned when I was young.
That's good.
So now, being in that place to say, okay, everything I do, I'm just going to graciously deal with it. Well, in the back of my head, I'm like, all right, you guys don't like me? Fine, I'm taking a class away until I find a trainer. But I had to graciously do that.
Enjoy sitting on the bench.
I said, here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to not charge you a fee for the month, and I'm going to remove one class until we figure it out. So me graciously dealing with it got a completely different result. But what happened is I said, let me give myself the boundaries. The boundaries for myself is don't overdo something that you're just not prepared to deal with. Like, you gotta just work within the confines of what you have. So for that once a week, I'm talking to them. They're liking the class. More people are coming in. The class is filled up. Next thing you know, they want a second class. Next thing you know, I've got a third class. Next thing you know, I have them getting dressed up and making Halloween costumes from home and coming in. And here I am experiencing this, where when you have somebody at 70 bringing in their spouse, their life partner, that is a different kind of trust.
Yeah.
Especially at an age where everybody in there has accepted mortality. Everybody in there knows it's inevitable.
It's powerful.
And that was the first time where I could actually speak about life, and it was met with grace because they were already there. And that's when I also realized that age, experience is going to have more relevance over age when it comes to speaking to life. And here I was watching people experiencing how they were thinking about life in a different way, and I just happened to be at the center of it. I was watching people experience something they didn't know existed because it was the first time in their life that they had been in an intimate space with a black person. And I didn't feel like I was approaching it from a victim mindset. But see, I didn't know what the victim mindset was because for the longest time I said I just won't associate myself with it because if you tell me I'm going to fall, I'm going to be like, how hard will I hit? Because I'm going to be right back up to do it again. So then all of a sudden, this became that thing where I had to model every moment after that. Every moment I ever experienced after that, I said, and I started taking notes. And I started taking notes to every moment I was having, because I had a friend in Florida who we were talking about doing a podcast. I'm like, why don't we just do two brothers getting to know each other? Now, at this point in my life, you got to understand, society had taken, when you get a bunch of brothers in a room and nobody wants to make eye contact,
right?
There's something wrong. That's the programming. It takes intentional. A person has to be so intentional not to be, when they're walking on the sidewalk, to not make eye contact with you, because the human condition just to being the instinctive creatures that we are, for us not to look and scan our surroundings means that we're trying to avoid.
Yeah.
And being able to identify one, society has been conditioned. Okay, don't talk about your feelings. Somebody might manipulate you. And also, just don't look at anybody, because you don't know what they might do. So then all of a sudden, people have been destigmatized and nobody's sharing anything. And then here it was where I showed these people at a gym something they never experienced before. And it gave me the courage to say, if they're seeing something in their life for the first time in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, why can't I?
Why can't I?
And, here it was.
That's
3
good,
years
Brian.
later, in 2018, where, remember I asked in 2013, what do you want from me? Well, in 2018, end of 2018, the answer was, I want you to share your story from a place of resolve, because when you finally speak my name, people will actually listen. I've given you every season. I've given you every weathering, because when people go to the beach, the rock they want to grab is the smoothest one. That's the rock that's been weathered the most. But guess what? I've laid you out on that beach. So share your story from a place of resolve and bring people to me. So I get to live, through divine oneness, the universe, and God, and it just really gets to work through me, but in a way that helps people understand themselves, so that they are actually taking that place of volition and living it. Because to center our life over happiness, it becomes to say, do you want to be happy, or do you want to be fulfilled? They're two different things.
Wow,
one's going to last you a lifetime.
So
one's going to last you a lifetime, and that's the one you can replicate from the inside out. And those moments of bliss is the icing on the cake from the people that you allow to share time and space with you.
Well, I want to ask you, because I want to give you a couple minutes to be able to talk about the shift coaching that you do. And if we have any listeners that are as moved as I know Richard and I are from listening to you and just the incredible empowering things and information that you are giving, if we have a listener that it just resonates with them and they're like, wow, I need more of this in my life.
Absolutely.
I need to change my mindset. I need to change how I think about things.
I want fulfillment.
Right. I want to live a different life than what I'm living, because I'm not really living. And I want to live. So if we have listeners that feel that way, why don't you take a few minutes here and talk about the shift coaching, what you do. Audience viewers, I'll have his contact information in our description, so you'll be able to reach out directly to him with any questions that you have. But I just want you to go ahead and take a couple minutes, Brian, and talk about the shift coaching, and kind of give our audience a little bit of detailed information about what it is that you do with that and how that works.
Absolutely. So what I do at the shift coaching is, this is an experience where you want change. Wherever you're at in your life, you feel like you're stuck, you feel like you're dealing with the same loop, you feel like you're going backwards, or just saying you just want to do something different. What I do as a cognitive coach is, dive deep to just really get a deeper understanding of you, because what you learn or understand about yourself, you can act on. You can't act on what you don't know. So what I do at the coaching, that's kind of the short little snippet. That's what it would look like. So that's what I have in there.
Well, I know that as I mentioned, I've definitely been moved and inspired by your story. And, that's one thing I love about what we do here at the Lionheart Institute is we give people a platform and an opportunity to share things that, people need to hear, things that will change people's lives and encourage and empower them. And I feel so blessed that we got to have you on here and to be able to talk about things. I mean, right now, honestly, my brain is just a little swirly. Yes, there's a lot going on in here about things that we've talked about. I have an understanding of the mind with my psychology degree, but you added a lot of great additions to things that I personally have already learned, which have been wonderful for me. And so I can imagine our audience heads are probably doing the same thing right now, just processing it and taking it in and thinking of how that can apply to their life. And I just, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and your life. And it's incredibly encouraging where you've been and what you discovered about yourself, and just your willingness to keep learning and your openness to new things in life. And maybe there's different perspectives that you never considered before, or different ways of thinking and understanding. And I think it's just a beautiful story how you've brought it all together. And now you're giving back to people with your coaching, and you're saying, hey, let me teach you what I've learned. Let me help you figure out how to live maybe faster than I did.
Fulfilled.
Live fulfilled, yes, 100%. So I just thank you so much. And again, I will leave his information in our description, because he's definitely somebody I encourage you to reach out to, and just spend some time with this man.
Brian, when you look at it, obviously you have transformed lives. Your life yourself has been transformed. Mm-hmm. You go back with meticulous detail to understand transformational moments in your life. And for the person that doesn't have that kind of mindset, they don't have that kind of memory, mm-hmm. Are you still able to work with them as far as figuring out key moments in their life that were pivotal and how to transform those?
Absolutely. And, the way that I typically go about that is, there are certain things that people do very well. If somebody's really good at their job, mm-hmm. and they know they're good at their job, and I say, you suck at your job, and they're like, no, I don't, I'm the best at what I do, I can work with that. Right. Because now they can give me what I do is I get to take people and take what they know well, whether it be positive or negative. If it's negative, I can flip it. But also, if we're dealing with something that's positive that they know, but say they prioritize their work as their sense of worth. If their job speaks to what their identity has been staked on, I can speak to that to actually speak to their core values, so that they can find a way to replicate it throughout the rest of their life. Because so take parenthood, right? Children, they bring me joy. When they achieve something they didn't know was possible, it brings me joy. Right. What would your life look like if you could experience that joy in every waking breath you took? And that's what I do as a cognitive coach, is I get people to replicate it throughout the rest of their lives. So, I could tell stories upon stories of those moments with, one thing that I tell people, and I think is important, is, one I say is, give yourself the opportunity to experience something outside of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. I went and skydived. I'm not saying be extreme and go skydive. I've seen the Grand Canyon. I mean, there are certain things that come with a beauty that Bob Ross couldn't even articulate to me, because it was that beautiful. If I lost my sight tomorrow, I'm blessed to have seen the Grand Canyon, because that's what I learned, to be able to take in natural beauty. So, that's the one thing I say is experience. Give yourself the opportunity to experience, and if you believe the outcome is one way, try it out to see if it's anything different.
So good.
It's okay to try something you've never done before, but that's where growth happens. And if it fails or it doesn't work out, there's always something you can learn from it, because you might just learn. If it didn't learn that you were going to succeed, at least you learned it wasn't for you. And then you don't have to spend your life saying, what if I had done it? What if I had did this? Because to live a life in a what if, that's the next thing. A what if life. What if is exactly why opportunities are missed.
It's good, man.
Yeah.
Brian, I'm so excited that he was on the show. Again, this is another one of my guests.
I know.
A person I've invited. You're going to have to learn how to step your game up, girl, because I only bring hitters to the table.
You do. I'll give you credit for that.
Brian, I want to thank you for joining us here on the Lionheart Institute podcast. We'll have to have you on again.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's so many things that I want to talk to you about. God bless you. Thank you for being on with us tonight.
Absolutely.
And we will chat with you in just a little bit. Everybody, we want to thank you for being with us during this podcast. It's absolutely incredible. So many things that I wanted to get to with Brian.
I know.
Time is limited, of course. Your head can only endure what your butt can, they say, right? But Brian is one of the most remarkable stories that I've ever heard.
Yeah.
If you could go back in a time machine with me and see this shy young man that was emerging out of his bubble some 15, 20 years ago, you would be shocked at the man he's become. Now, there's so many things I want to talk about.
Right.
He's done a video on Candace Owens. He has political views. He has passion about the world that we live in.
Yeah.
He sees things in a very unique way. He's not limited just by the color of his skin, but he truly is a content of his character kind of a guy.
Yeah.
He helps people mature character in their life, and he helps them develop a vision to really where they go from being successful, just being high performers, to truly being fulfilled in life. And there is, as he began to touch on there, a huge difference between being a winner or being successful and being fulfilled in that.
Yeah.
Night and day.
Yeah.
And I would encourage you, whether it's one session just for an evaluation, or whether it's a package of coaching training. We're in the great Northwest, and one of the great leaders in Seattle right now that everybody's raving about is Russell Wilson. Last year, he almost won the MVP.
Yeah.
Almost brought the Seahawks to the Super Bowl. Right now, he's 5-0, something that the Seahawks haven't done for years. And I hope I don't jinx them if that's the right word. But they're on a winning streak like nobody else. He's playing at such a high level that everybody's amazed by him. But he has a life coach.
Yeah.
People do not understand the importance of our minds and the way that we think.
Yeah.
It's crucial to every element of fulfillment in our life, all areas of success. I used to be a little bit different, as you know, right? Yeah. I'm not a feely kind of an emotional guy. I certainly don't want to talk to anybody about it, right? But the one area that I've begun to grow is in our relationships.
Yeah.
I had a beautiful relationship previously. I've only really loved 2 people in my lifetime. At least long-term relationship with you and Christy. And there's so many things that you are benefiting from that she didn't have the privilege of having because I've learned to communicate.
Yeah.
Because I've learned that it's okay to say I'm not all right, that I don't have it all together. I thought for a very long time that being a good husband meant just faking the areas that you were deficient in. And that's absolutely not true.
Right.
I thought being a good father was faking those areas of deficiency. And so what Brian is able to do is to help you, not that he's going to do it all by himself,
right,
but he's going to help you analyze where are you anchored, why are you anchored to those feelings and those emotions, how are they betraying you, how are they benefiting you, and then he's going to help you become intentional about the way that you implement your language in your life that becomes building blocks for you to build the life that you want to live and the life that you want to have and that you deserve.
100%, yeah.
It's powerful.
So good.
And in this COVID age where you're probably half stuck doing nothing anyway, you can't go nowhere, the holidays are off, vacations are off, take that in money that you were going to take to invest in a holiday and invest it into some coaching and training that'll take you on holidays for the rest of your life.
Because it's life-changing.
Absolutely.
100% worth it.
Transformational, family-changing. It will benefit you for decades to come. And not only will it benefit you, but think about what it'll do for your children and your grandchildren if you can begin to not have to necessarily get a coach for them all the time, although I recommend that as well. But you begin to implement it in your family.
Yeah, so good.
Everybody, I'm Richard Thomas.
And I'm Tiffany Thomas.
And we want to thank you for being a part of this podcast. It's been a powerful one. And we want to encourage you to please subscribe.
Yes, definitely. If you want to see more videos and empowering stories like Brian's and our previous guests, please subscribe. That way we can keep bringing these encouraging stories your way. It definitely means the world to us for you to do that, and like, comment, and share. Get these stories out there. They've already impacted so many of you people that you've reached out to us and already told us how much, which means a lot.
It means everything.
It does. And so I already know that Brian's story is going to impact some of you out there as well. Please share those with us. It's encouraging to us to continue to do this. It's important for us to continue to empower people and share stories. So definitely subscribe and continue to communicate with us because we appreciate it.
Thank you so much. God bless you and have a wonderful day.
See you soon.